particularly from an intersectional standpoint that allows us to face race into an equation. South Africa's history of brutalization has become entrenched within society, resulting in hypermasculinity. That idea of masculinity are still entrenched and preached in our churches, social groups, the school, and at home, where they are clearly defined and marked gender roles, which further feeds on patriarchy and creates a system and a gap where it comes to gender inequality and the freedom of expression. The issue is so prevalent that within society, there's 41% of people raped, and those are children. 1 out of 9 cases are reported. Of those reported, only 4% results in prosecution. This can be attributed to an inept justice system and a culture of denialism of rape culture, which protects perpetrators and vilifies survivors for being victims. Unfortunately, many experts that the state of sexual violence in South Africa are high, that what has become statistically recorded as underreporting skews the figures, which even if you are Google right now and based on the internet, you will find that rape cases are not conclusive. Rape is an assertion of male power. The solution to South Africa's gender-based violence risk is not to task women with the responsibility of arming and protecting themselves, but to rather change the societal narrative of women and their bodily autonomy. The best protection is to teach non-violence and respect for women. We can start by stop addressing women as our women and address women as women. Only then we can create a safer society for marginalized identities so that they don't have to protect themselves in the first place. Gender-based violence is both a human rights and a public health issue, which not only affects the individual, but has an impact on families, communities, both in short term and in long term. The consequence of violence on individuals includes physical effects, such as broken bones, chronic pain, headache, miscarriages and labor for women. And the psychological aspect includes depression, anxiety, suicide, sleep deprivation, and post-traumatic stress. Violence also drains women's energy and confidence, and therefore undermines their full economic and social development and participation. Violence against women is a persistent and universal problem occurring in different cultures and societal groups. Violence against women has become the most pervasive yet least recognized human rights abuse in the world. Women are entitled to the full and equal enjoyment of their human rights, free from discrimination in all forms of discrimination, regardless of where they come from, who they are, or their societal background. The effects of violence can remain with women throughout their lives. It is reported that children who have experienced violence in their lifetime are more likely to be victims of violence or be perpetrators of violence themselves. For an effective response to violence, different sectors in society must work together. A rape survivor must have rapid access to a health clinic that can administer emergency medical care, including treatment to prevent HIV and unattended pregnancies and counseling. A woman who is beaten by her husband must have somewhere to go with her children to enjoy safety and a shelter over their head. A victim of violence must have confidence that when she files a report to the police, she will receive justice and the perpetrators will be punished. And an adolescent boy in school who learns about health and sexuality must be taught that coercion, violence, and discrimination against girls is totally unacceptable. South Africa is becoming increasingly unsafe for women to live. The crime against women in South Africa is reported that femicide in South Africa is 5 times higher than in the globe, which means that in South Africa, women are 5 times more likely to be killed due to gender-based violence committed by men. We see results every day being posted of women going missing and later finding out that these women have been killed or fallen victim of gender-based violence. I mentioned women like Anele Boyzin, Karabo Mokoena, and a recent case of 2019 of Uyinian who was brutally murdered in Claremont. This shows that any type of woman's life is threatened. The perpetrators have waged a war on women's bodies, and on a daily, women are being killed, go missing, or fall victim of abuse. The reason why I'm so vocal about this projection of Black femme bodies is because in our country specifically, we are seeing a rise in gender-based violence. It's clear that anything femme is seen as weaker. And when you are born in a cis male body and present yourself in a more feminine or is a trans woman, your body is equal to an under threat. This almost is...
Comrade. Thank you, Comrade Thabile.
Is my up?
Thank you. Time up.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Comrade Tabile. We have heard, comrades, we have heard the voice of the youth. The struggle must continue from one generation to the next. I think, Comrade Tabile, you've also touched on the issue of whereby women, some cases go unreported. I think we need to encourage society and everybody out there that as much as they report, they should not withdraw the cases because the police is faced with those challenges of cases being withdrawn. And we need to encourage people to report the cases. Thank you very much. Comrades, our panelists will join us from the Cape. It is the ANC Provincial Secretary, Comrade Lulama Nuga Aitobi. You have the floor, Comrade Lulama.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
And thanks very much to the leadership of the Alliance nationally and all leaders that have joined the discussion today. I should appreciate the opportunity given, and I hope that I will make some contribution to the discussion on how best can we have a process in which males and boy children can contribute towards the end of gender-based violence and femicide. Let me start by prefacing that as men within the ANC and generally in our country, we have been tolerant, indifferent, silent for too long, or even worse. When we speak, we make excuses, explanation, and try to rationalize acts of gender-based violence and femicide. It is time for men to take action against gender-based violence and femicide. It is time for us to take a stand and change things. Some will ask why specifically targeting men when gender includes all genders. Well, for any campaign to be successful, it has to be targeted and specific. Firstly, statistics, as other speakers have already spoken, tell us that the majority of the gender-based violence cases are perpetrated by men. Secondly, we live in a highly patriarchal society with high levels of inequality between men and women, post 26 years into democracy, with most power concentrated in the hands of men. And lastly, women have been leading campaigns on the gender-based violence and femicide for some years, but men are yet to take a stand. So that's the reality of South Africa. Now, as part of the discussion, we thought that we should put some practical steps that should be taken. Part of those particular practical steps is that we said there should be a campaign around 3 pillars. The first pillar will be social mobilization and civic education. The second pillar would be the renewal and reactivation of the existing institutional mechanisms. The third pillar would be institutional and policy reform. Then we said the campaign will be ANC and alliance-led, which will incorporate broad front of across civil society. Secondly, the underlying message of the campaign will be about men taking... The message of the campaign will target the acts against the gender-based violence and femicide, including acts against members of the LGBTIQ+ communities. On the social mobilization and civic education aspect, we have of the view that, Comrade Chairperson, we should target school-going children and ensure that in their syllabus, we encourage the Department of Education to include as part of their syllabus the issue that relates to gender equality and how to treat women, morality and ethics. The second issue that we have said it should be structures that should be set up is that in each and every office of the African National Congress, be it at the regional, provincial, and at national level, we should have a nerve center of the GBV unit, which will be composed of people that are very intolerant, that are agile in doing their own work, that will be targeted into campaigns against the gender-based violence and follow up on government's work insofar as the gender-based violence, and therefore create a network throughout the organizations that we work with and generally the society. Secondly, we agree that we should incorporate the issue of the gender-based violence into our street committees or village-based committees. The ANC structures, as I said, the provincial secretaries, regional secretaries, or chairpersons must be designated, in particular when they are males, to be designated specifically to be champions against the gender-based violence. We should target also the civil society groups and NGOs and CBOs, target sections of organized men, traditional leaders, church and faith-based organizations, sports, arts and cultural organizations, youth and student groups, school learners, target lawyers to take stands against the gender-based violence. Because part of where the problem becomes so serious is when gender-based violence perpetrated individuals have to be confronted with a situation of law, with lawyers as big named as they are going to defend the perpetrators, knowingly that these particular individuals are perpetrators. We have agreed, comrades, that we should target other political parties so that they could be a broad front against the gender-based violence and femicide. We said, comrades, government and SOEs must establish gender-sensitive machinery in the highest echelons of their offices that will be agile in dealing with the matter that relates to gender-based violence. We agreed, comrades, on the second aspect on renewal and reactivation of the existing institutional mechanisms. That the current institutional mechanisms on GBV, like the police courts, to centers, etc., have proven to be ineffective and dysfunctional. This part of the campaign will have to focus on auditing and revitalization and strengthening the capabilities within those particular centers and institutions so that they can have the necessary agility to deal with matters that relates to gender-based violence.
Thank you, Dulama. We want to thank you. Thanks so much, Comrade Dulama Toby, with that good perspective and some real ideas that you have raised that we need to focus on. Without any waste of time, comrades, I'll move to the next speaker. And the speaker does not need any introduction on this topic because the Women's League, the ANC Women's League, has been playing a very pivotal role in terms of dealing with the gender-based violence, in terms of the roles of girls and boys. As we have this topic of gender-based violence, I am going to move on, comrades, and call on board the president of the ANC Women's League, that is Comrade Bathabile Dlamini. Comrade Bathabile, over to you.
Comrade Bata, unmute yourself.
Proceed, Comrade Bata.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Old Age. Chairperson, let me also thank the ANC and Alliance partners for organizing this dialogue. It's movement towards a positive direction. I think there is a lot that we've been saying as women, and the time has come for men to start taking issues of gender-based violence seriously. And also, as we must act as South Africans, because we have lost a dignity, because women are killed every day, and that is not a shock to anyone. So you can see what happened during COVID-19 and also after COVID-19. And today women are dying continuously. And on the 4th of June, we saw something very, very painful. The killing of Tshegofatso Pule was very painful. It was not the first femicide in the country, but it instilled more fear in women. And the problem we have is that at all times, when a woman is killed, we've always found the reason why that woman was killed. So women are always wrong. And we all know that issues of gender-based violence are a societal issue, and that they are about unequal power relations between men and women. And this prevents women from achieving full advancement. So it is systemic, it is happening in all sectors of the society, and it is also linked to racism and class. And we need to try and look at new things. The early stages of development of all human beings are very important, because that is where we mold people. And therefore, men and boys must know what makes women feel inferior, to have low self-esteem, and to feel discriminated against, excluded, and deprived. And they must understand problems and challenges of women that start from home and extend to communities and the society at large. And the institutions that are pillars of patriarchy, and the state is part of them. Political parties are also a part of those institutions, faith-based organizations. And so we are dealing with something that is structural and systemic. At home, girls are raped at a very early age. And this destroys the girl child emotionally, psychologically, and physically. Heavy domestic responsibilities that are given to girls that made them mini wives, the washing, cleaning, cooking, whilst the boy child is playing in the street. And the skewed cultural beliefs that are static. We all know that culture is dynamic, but our beliefs are very static. The challenges of female genital mutilation, ukuhlolwa kwamantombazane, and a society that is always worried about the behavior of girls and not boys. But also, I've heard us here talking about our women, our girls. We have dignity as women, and we don't have to be protected because we belong to someone. We have value, and our value does not depend on being someone's sister or daughter or granddaughter. And one other important issue is that at all times, the language we use, the way it is encoded is very, very dangerous, because it says the rights of women do not exist. And the way the society is rough. I remember when the Department of Education introduced something that was saying schools are going to learn about reproductive health and sexual rights. There was a huge fight and we all kept quiet when we knew that this is about the rights of young women and dignity and control over their bodies. And one other issue is that sexual exploitation is all over, starting from home school, in the street, at the workplace, boardroom, institutions of higher learning, and there is a demand for sex from us. Sex for safety, sex for marks, sex for promotion at work, and therefore these are the things that we think a man must learn about. And girls are nowhere on the issues of politics, socio-economic conditions, representation of women in decision-making bodies. We also have to look into our curriculum. I agree, because the attitudes of teachers in schools and the material that is used is undermining to girls. And therefore, this must change. Sacred places where we've been pushing our children to, churches, our children are raped there. They are groomed, and boys are sodomized there. And because we have our own beliefs and think the church is the safest place for our children, and they are abused there.
I'm sorry, President, I will have to stop you. Thank you very much. Malibongwe, we have heard very well. The women have again spoken. I will thank you very much, Comrade President, and now move on to the first DGS, the Director General of the SACP, Comrade Solima Paela. He will be telling us about the work that also they've been doing in the Gender Coordination Commission of the SACP and outlining these issues around this matter. Over to Comrade Mapaela.
Thank you very much, Comrade Joyce Moloi Moropa, our National Treasurer, and to greet all the leadership present here, especially the President of the ANC Women's League, and Comrade Jesse Duarte, the official of the ANC, and Comrade Boni Marekwa, the fellow program director, and all other comrades present. I think it's important that this program is launched. I agree fully with assertions that Comrade Lulamile highlighted. The Alliance has to claim its role properly in the struggle for a non-sexist South Africa and against gender-based violence, patriarchy, and sexism. I think maybe let me also use this opportunity, comrades, to pay tribute to first the few mothers that we lost in the last few days, who contributed immensely in our struggle, particularly even through their children. The mother of Comrade Jabu Mlegeti, Geraldine Fraser Mlegeti, Trevor Manuel, as well as Comrade Paul Mashatile. And of course, many women who died in recent time because of gender-based violence unleashed on them, particularly by men. And that these many women who died have arose on the movement, social consciousness. If you like, they've paid the supreme sacrifice. Not that for a movement like ours, we needed them to die before our consciousness can be aroused. It is important to appreciate that the value of life and to elevate the right to life in our country. Although this is a bad example, there's one country that I know, Comrade Jesse, they avenged the death of every single citizen anywhere else in the world. That's how they value the life of their own nation. We need to reach a level where ourselves, without following them, we need to reach a level where we appreciate the life of all South Africans. And gender-based violence in our country, I fully agree with Comrade Batabile, is intrinsically intertwined with capitalist production relations that produces as well patriarchy. And that patriarchal social relations are themselves problematic, they can also happen even in under no capitalist production. But it's important that we appreciate the centrality of the system of capitalism in the production of patriarchy, sexism, gender-based violence, gender inequality, gender oppression, as well as exploitation. So capitalism itself has relegated from its system of production the women at the lower rung of production sphere, and even pay women lower salaries for the same work that they do with men. The patriarchal offshoots further subject women to a system of male domination, which is even culturalized, and in our case, we make it so common, the points that Comrade Batabile was raising. And I think it has not only unleashed a frontal attack on women with unpaid labor at homes in different households, where women care for the entire family, and that work and other chores are not paid for. All of that precisely because on the one hand, there's an interlink with how the capitalist system on its own reproduction benefits. And therefore, patriarchal social relations are a major consequence of the hegemonic system of capitalist production relations. And we need to ensure that men rise up to fight against this system, but not only to wait until the capitalist system has been overthrown, but the final end of gender inequality in society will happen when the capitalist system has been fully defeated. In the meantime, we need to ensure that the state system or the public system intervenes for the material economic well-being of women of our country, as well as embodying that in their education system, so that they don't have to rely on men who are prioritized through the capitalist system to be the so-called providers in the family. So it is critical that in this dealing with this crisis, we appreciate the interrelations of the point that Comrade Batabile is raising, of race, class, and gender in the context of South Africa, and therefore end racism, gender in the context of South African racism, I mean gender-based violence and gender oppression in the context of South African racism, basically ending national oppression of one group by the other, as well as creating a non-sexist society by ending sexism in the manner in which we conduct ourselves, we do things, and also how we produce and we share the produce. In that way, we can then also create an equal society that can share in the prosperity of its wealth. At the moment, all of this accrues to a system that benefits but creates an entrenchment of oppression over women. You can see that even when we deracialize capital, for instance, they absorb few women and the collective of women remain oppressed. So it's important that we deal with the source of the problem. To what solutions, Comrade Chair, one would say, we can learn from other countries like Cuba, for instance, who established in 1974 the family code system, which entrenched new gender relations in society. And it has been hailed as one of the best in the world. And of course, even the former Soviets, if you like, communist Russia, had developed a very important system of social reproduction that started at the early childhood development levels, where actually they sent top academics in the country who were teaching, who were learning, even at universities, professors about early childhood development, to go and be at the center of the integration of the new society. So unless you take such kind of radical measures, you will not be able to transform society in the manner that it's supposed to be. We'll only be dealing with the bigger issues when there's a crisis point, and will not be able to deal with what grows the crisis. Lastly, Comrade Chair, is to indicate that we should be able to create intervention mechanism at the level of organs of people's power, specifically focused on the fight against gender-based violence and gender oppression and for gender equality, and create a mechanism to fight against what we call lumpen patriarchy, this system where rape and sexual violence is glorified by children. We're reading one academic who did a study about the male domination and the concept of how young people in the township are brought up. That system needs to be created to fight against that from a street level. And the alliance movement is best capable to create the possibility to fight against that and to create a possibility for mobilization and to fight against gender-based violence. We must also, Comrade Chair, highlight one last point that which Fidel Castro has once raised regarding the education system. And it has been raised this point in this discussion today. The education system has to be completely and in the main anti-capitalist, because if you don't have an education system that is anti-capitalist, you'll then have people that are selfish. What Fidel Castro sometimes calls them, they even become so bandits because they are self-centered about themselves and they elevate the value system of exploitation, of oppression, of self-aggrandizement, and it is nothing to do with solidarity and empathy and the well-being of the collectives. So as a system, even if we may say that as a movement we are for a mixed system, we must admit our system today is not just mixed. We are following a free market capitalist system that has even gone neoliberal. That is the worst form of capitalism. And under any form of capitalism worldwide, you'll see the acute people who feel the acute pains and problems are women and children. And that's what we're feeling here. So we want to commit the SACP in joining this program, ensuring that we protect women and children in our communities. We fight especially against gender-based violence, sexism, patriarchy, and all forms of women's oppression, so that we can live freely as equals. There are studies that we can embark on. Comrade President, Eritrea is a good example in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Soli, for your very deep and insightful comments. I think that race, gender, class, the capitalist system, patriarchy, these are all joined at the hip. And one of the things we need to do is to struggle against that, to make sure that women don't remain at the bottom end of the pyramid and that we are not bashed, raped, killed simply because we are women. And I think you make very, very important points. Our next speaker is no stranger to the issues of gender-based violence. Reverend Bafana Khumalo from the Sonke General Justice has served on the National AIDS Council as a commissioner for the Chapter 9 institution, and he's also served on the Commission for Gender Equality. Reverend Khumalo, the floor is yours. Reverend Khumalo, please unmute.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Jesse. The President and the leadership of the Alliance, thank you for inviting me to engage with you in this space on a matter that I believe is of great importance to all of us. We meet at a challenging time, of course, for our country, confronted by 3 pandemics: the vicious novel COVID-19, the pandemic of abject poverty affecting a sizable number of our people, and what Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the Undersecretary of the UN and the Executive Director of UN Women, calls the shadow pandemic of GBV and femicides. The past 2 weeks have once more seen an explosion of brutal slaying of women and children. GBV and femicides have always been with us, but on occasion we are hit with crudest forms of such episodes that demonstrates high level of cruelty. I do not have to regurgitate these cases here because I'm sure that we are all familiar with them. Part of the problem, according to data from Stats South Africa, is that we have a situation where more than 60% of South African children do not have a father figure that they relate to, because either the father is absent or the father is present but absent, what I call ATM fathers. Fathers who think the only responsibility is to provide money but not take emotional responsibility for their children. We learn also that 1 in 3 women will be sexually attacked, possibly by a father or potential father. Likewise, 2 in 5 are beaten by their partners, and half will be sexually harassed at work. Worse still, as we have been witnessing recently, 1 in 15 are murdered by their partners. One of the main challenges fueling this, of course, is patriarchy, as Comrade Soli has clearly articulated, and Comrade Batabile. We are by and large a patriarchal society in South Africa. I think this influences the norms that inform the negative behaviors that impact heavily on women and children, and those presenting alternative sexual orientation. As a country, we have embarked on a positive trajectory that seeks to steer us away from this negative sentiment and set us on a course free of gender-based violence. The current National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicides is a useful policy intervention, far-reaching and potentially potent to help us turn the tide against gender-based violence and femicides. But like all good policies, the devil is in the implementation. We need to act and act urgently. Women cannot afford any delays as their lives are exposed to danger every minute of the day. There is a stubborn sense of toxic masculinity characterized by patriarchal arrogance that is generally pervasive in most of our public life. Such negative masculinities are in full display, even in our own parliament, in full glare of the public, as we are exposed to our leaders behaving in unbecoming manner and speak to fellow MPs in languages that should not be part of a democratic South Africa. We observe on numerous occasions women's bodies being weaponized in the struggle of ideas and control of the discourse in the assembly. We observe key political leaders making disparaging remarks about women and showing poor judgment in how they relate, especially to younger women. There has been several reported cases of abuse of young women meted out by some of our leaders within even our movement. This does not bode well for the role that the Alliance should be playing on this social matter. You, as leaders of society, must lead from the front. When society observes you behaving in particular ways, many take it as a norm to be followed. Being leader of society is not just about what you say in your pronouncements. It is about more. It is about how you behave in both public and private spaces. It is about how you treat the vulnerable. It is about how you lead by example and walk the talk. I dare say what is more important, perhaps, is not what you say, but rather what you do, because action speaks louder than words. What we need is bold leadership that will help guide the country through this treacherous maze. As a country, there is a general positive sentiment by the forthright leadership that the president is showing on this matter. His consistent public pronouncements on this matter give a sense of hope for a change in the current trajectory. The signing of the GBV NSP is another big step in the right direction, setting our country on a firm path on a positive response to GBV. But the president cannot be on his own on this. There needs to be coherence in the whole entire edifice of the leadership of the movement. Messaging must be consistent, unambiguous, and coherent. We all must march on the same line on this and send a strong message to society that there is a unity of purpose and we take this matter seriously. What then needs to be done? We need to challenge patriarchy at every turn, reinforce our clear, strong constitutional values encapsulated in the Bill of Rights and the equality clauses. We need to change early messaging systems. Comrade Bata talked about the comprehensive sexuality education. That's where it must start, so that we empower our young people to have right knowledge, appropriate knowledge, so that they can make correct decisions about their lives. Without this, no amount of policing will assist. We use the analogy of a swamp filled with crocodiles in this instance. Every time the crocodile attacks people, police person is sent to try and find a crocodile and knock it out on its head. In this case, draining the swamp would be a better and lasting option. The swamp itself being the ideologies, the value system that nurtures and sustains toxic masculinity. We need to provide resources of civil society actors so that they can engage in mass belief and value changing systems in the most masculine spaces, like your taverns, your clubs, your sporting areas, your mining sector, your agriculture sector, that is dominated by a lot of these toxic masculinities. We need a social context training, which must be compulsory for all public sector personnel dealing with GBV, with your judges, with your magistrates, with your police, with your social workers, with your nurses, so that the value systems change. I'm sure all of you must have read this afternoon the case of a woman who was brutally killed in Springs by a partner, where the case has just been thrown out of court. It can be that in a South Africa of today, a woman who was killed where there are witnesses, where there should be the DNA evidence, the case is thrown out of court because the case is poor. It just cannot be accepted. So all these things, we need to close all those gaps. I think I should stop there, Chairperson, without dragging this too long. But the major focus I want to end with, Comrade Jesse, is that we need a direct focus to men for self-reflection. Because unless as men, we take responsibility for all these wrongs that are happening in our society, we will never turn the tide against gender-based violence. There needs to be ownership and there needs to be accountability. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Bafana. Lead by example. And we are discussing what can be done by men and boys and what we can do to change the thinking in our society towards women. Comrade President, a few days ago when you addressed the nation, you said, as a man, as a father, as a husband, I am appalled at what is no less than a war being waged against the women and children of our country. At a time when the pandemic has left us all feeling vulnerable and uncertain, violence is being unleashed on women and children with a brutality that defies comprehension. Having listened to our esteemed panel and the inputs we received tonight, are they enough to help us chart a way forward on the role men and boys can play in this struggle? Comrade President, over to you. Comrade President. While we wait for the President to come online, what we can certainly agree is that all the speakers have had a very similar theme in what they've spoken about, and that is that ending gender-based violence is not the task of one or other group, but it is a societal task. It requires education to be reassessed and remodeled. It requires us to shift our thinking in many different ways. It requires us to unbundle the manner in which patriarchy has schooled us to believe that women have to kowtow down to, as Comrade Batabile said, job, sex for education, sex for a lift to go to town. Your body becomes a tool that other people want to use to gain access to you. Whereas in reality, our bodies are our own bodies. We can do with them as we decide to do with them and not as we are being told to do with them. So we're just waiting for the president to come online. And I must just say that some of the issues Comrade Bafana has raised are very thought-provoking. And these are the issues we should be able to mainstream in our discussions. But Comrade Solly makes the point that what we need to do is, to put it in simple language, mass mobilization on the ground. As also Comrade Nugai Toby was very, very practical and talked about what we need to do in our townships, in the villages, and in the cities. Reschooling, reorientating, having a discussion with boys and men, particularly with the boy child, about what needs to happen with that child to see a woman as a person to value and not to want to rape or hurt or bring violence upon. So I'm just trying to find out if anybody has the president online, and if the president is not online yet, we will continue with the debate and the discussion in whichever way we can. But what we wanted to achieve tonight, comrades, was a discussion amongst the male cadre of our community of the Alliance. Because up to now, it's women who have been in the forefront of raising the issues about gender-based violence. It's women who have been marching, going to stand in front of courts. It's women who have been supporting the victims, because most times we actually don't know who the perpetrators are. A very important point is made that, do we understand why people behave in the way they behave? Is there a necessity for us to do some digging, some research, some talking about what stimulates in South Africa of today this unbelievable system of violence that we see? And what we might want to do is to take a few of the comrades who are with us tonight to make some comments and give us some of their own insights. We haven't, and then we can get the panel in the meantime to respond while we're waiting for the president to come online. I'd ask Comrade Phoebe to give us a few of the comrades who have indicated they'd like to speak, and we can begin to invite people.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. We have Comrade Paul Bester, followed by Comrade Landin Charlie.
Comrade Paul, I'll hand over to Comrade Bonnie.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Jesse. Comrade Paul.
Good evening, Comrade Chairperson, Comrade President. I'm Paul Bester from Kusatu in Western Cape. Mine is just a small input to say, you know, if you give a woman in South Africa, you give her a piece of meat, she will prepare you a lunch. If you give her mortar and bricks, she gives you a house. She gives you a child. This is what woman does for us in South Africa as mothers of the nation. What do we as men in South Africa do to women? We kill them, we maim them, we misuse them. And I think it's time for men to stand up and fight this fight. First and foremost, Comrade Chair, is to deal with the justice cluster. There should be a total remake and a look at the justice cluster. From the police, who's the first responder on the scene where a woman has been raped or killed, special attention to those cases. And when the perpetrator is arrested, the law should not be looking on the soft side of that man. He should be put away for life, because we cannot allow this, that women and children in South Africa be killed and maimed by our men. So I request, and then listening to the high-level speakers that is here tonight, and listening to this, please take this to your constituency and your portfolio committees, comrades and ministers, and let's see that we can really look at the justice cluster so that this kind of a thing doesn't happen anymore. And if you do get caught, the law does not play with you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Comrade Paul, for the input. Much appreciated. We'll go to the next speaker.
Comrade Lindy Challenge.
Comrade Lindy.
No, thank you very much, and greetings to the entire Alliance leadership. And we appreciate from the panel on issues raised in terms of dealing with our challenges that we're facing on the violence of women and children. But key things that I wanted to touch is in terms of our patriarchy. That is, Alliance partners, we should be dealing with the issue of patriarchy in all our structures. And we must also take that back to our society, because whatever that happens at the societal level. And that has manifested itself due to your economic issues, your economic empowerment of women. And I think it's a matter that makes most of these women vulnerable. And also the social systems which were in, where men hold more primary power and predominant in the roles of political leadership. And I think it's a matter that we should look into. And another critical matter that we should look into, the attitudes of our boys and our young men. There's a study that was conducted by the Global Health Action, Taylor and Francis Group, that went through and conducted a study on the attitudes. What they came out as the outcome of that, it was found that young boys' attitude was endorsing more gender, patriarchy, gender beliefs. That was very high, and that study was conducted at your grade 6 and boys and girls. It tells you that the key, it's at the home, at the primary school, at your ECD centers, where we would teach, and the tolerance of, in terms of your gender attitudes and tolerance. And the two last issues that I want to raise is in terms of your gender attitudes that are associated with your depression from our young boys, our young men, and that contributing factor of your mental health standing in the community, because the killing, the violence that has been unleashed to our women and children, it is showing a sign of a society that needs medical, your mental health attention. And lastly, to the moderator, we must deal with the peer violence, because some of these boys, during their growing up, the peer violence within themselves has been a contributory factor towards this. And those are the issues that we must take back home. The attitudes. I've got 3 boys. I'm a mother of 3 boys. I don't have girls. But I must teach my own boys that you must wash the dishes, you must clean, you must do. We must not domesticate young girls, and young boys are our kings. So that's the contribution that we wanted to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the ancestors building and forming our way forward. Thank you very much. I have over to we can take 2 more speakers.
We have Comrade Zakaria Tolo and Comrade Chauke.
Comrade Zake.
Thank you so much, Comrade Phoebe. My own contribution, comrades, is to really appreciate this discussion. And I think we must congratulate comrades who initiated this, because some of us are in deep pain, both as husbands and as fathers of beautiful girls. The first point that I would like to make is to support and advance the cause of human emancipation is a constitutional matter, enshrined in Rule 2.7. The second issue, the Freedom Charter, is very clear that all shall enjoy equal human rights. And under these terrible conditions of bullying, murder, and social assaults, sexual assault, women in our country are therefore not enjoying the human rights as pronounced on by the Constitution. My suggestion is that we need to think seriously, comrades, of organizing a national indaba, where we can consolidate all the inputs that have been made tonight, for instance, and invite other societal groupings to participate in that, so that the outcome of that indaba can culminate into a national program of action, which will cover and mobilize the entire society. We should also recall Comrade Oliver Tambo's word where he said, the emancipation of women is not a women's problem. It is actually the problem for all of us. He also said that men themselves, the perpetrators, they also need to be liberated. And I think as we formulated that strategy and their approach, we must always keep those in mind, that the perpetrator himself is enslaved and needs to be liberated. Thank you, Comrade Chair.
Thank you, Comrade. We'll call the next speaker, Comrade Chauke.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair, and let me appreciate the initiators of this debate, the African National Congress, the leader of the society. But I think what is important, Comrade Chair, is that we need to pitch this debate at a level where we are able to reach to our ordinary people on the ground. Currently, yes, I'm happy that we started very well and we have pitched it at the highest level. The target here is a man there in the squatter camp, a boy there in the village, a man there in the township that we must talk to. And therefore, I think we're making this debate. I was very excited earlier when I watched television and I saw that this was live on television, especially the SABC, the public broadcaster. But immediately it then turned off. I then watched television. I saw SABC is now focusing on Donald Trump in America. So they've really left one of the biggest opportunity that we must begin where it went wrong. And I think with this debate, Comrade Chair, we must never miss a point that at some point before the arrival of the colonizer, there was a family life. A man was respected, a man took care of his family. His boys learned from their father. There were family values. During the struggle that we waged, Comrade Chair, one of the things that was to do was to restore the family value. And that I think we have not done very much, Chair. We have set up systems in place, both at communities, we have CPF, we have ward committees, we have MPs, MPLs, we have churches, almost every single structure in the community that we have set up. But the problem is that, what is the purpose when we are faced with such a challenge? It means that somehow we're missing the point. We need to address this point of a man. The man, that's where the problem starts. When capitalism was introduced and the destruction of family life, a man became a target. And that target is what we are still dealing with. Let us point exactly who is the target. And the target here is a man. It's a man that imparts knowledge to this boy that we're talking about. A boy that goes there, smoking nyaupe, sit in the township, do housebreaking, because the family values have been destroyed. A man himself has been destroyed by a system that only wanted a man to provide labor, nothing else but labor, right? Now, on top of that, we have now to deal again with the element of patriarchy. Again, that brings in a man and his role again, being this person that is muscular, is the one that determines everything in a family, in a community. Now we need to build a new man. And it's a campaign that we must wage as the ANC. We must build a new man that will understand, that will know the role and the values of the family. The new man that will take charge as a leader in a community. A new man that will respect his family, that will give life to his family. A new man that will be identified in the community as a hero. We need to begin to create that. And it had to start somewhere. So let us go back to basic. Many, many years ago, if you look at during the arrival, during the colonizer, being the British, when the...
He's not hearing.
Thank you, Comrade Chauke.
Of product rather than a defender of the society. So I'm saying this debate is correct. Let us talk
Yeah, it's unmuted.
Thank you, comrades.
Let the public broadcaster play his role too.
Comrade Chauke, sorry, your time is up. Comrade Chauke, thank you. Comrades, the President has joined us, and we will now invite the President to make his remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Comrade Jesse, and the comrades who are participating, the President of the ANC Women's League, and indeed all the leaders of the Alliance. I think it's really outstanding. It's wonderful that the Alliance has launched this debate in public on tackling gender-based violence, and particularly around the tasks that men need to embark upon to rid our country of the scourge of gender-based violence. I'm particularly pleased to see that the men of our country are awakening to the ugly reality of gender-based violence in our country, and awakening in a way of saying they will stand up and contribute towards stopping the scourge. And I think this is something that should be welcomed by the women of our country, because they have been waging the war alone, and they have always felt they needed the support of the men of our country. And now today, yes, we can have the men of our country participating. And in this regard, this is an outstanding initiative by the Alliance. And in joining the fight against gender-based violence, there are quite a number of permutations to it. But I think the key one has to target the men of South Africa, and we need to speak to the hearts and the souls of the men of our country, because it is they who disrespect women, who dishonor women, who destroy women's lives. And by destroy, I mean real destroy, in the form of, if you rape a woman, you're basically sentencing her to death. If you kill a woman, she is dead. And this is happening at the hands of men. And if you unleash your violence against a woman, you are scarring her for life. And this is precisely what we men need to be aware of and to stop, because unless we mobilize men to stop the violence that they are perpetrating against women, it will not stop. Patriarchy is practiced and exercised by men, and men think that they are more superior to women, and some men believe that they own the women, and therefore they can order them around, beat them up, rape them, and kill them. And it is this patriarchy that prevails in men that we need to break down. And I believe that it is possible to break this down. We need to raise the level of awareness and consciousness and speak to the men of South Africa. I'm hoping that with this initiative, we will start a massive movement that should rage throughout the country, where we get men to realize and to be aware that women are not their objects, women are not their punchbacks, women are not there to be raped or to be killed. And if we can do that, in the streets of our townships, in the pathways of our villages, and if we can then mobilize various other organizations organizations where men participate in, our traditional leaders, in the churches, in the clubs, in the stokvels, in the sports clubs and all that. If we can do that, we will have gone a long way. And I would like to see a situation where we now start a big campaign and we get the literature properly crafted with clear messages that should be beamed to men. Clear messages that should also go to young boys, because it is also in the home where this messaging should start. Young boys need, from a very early age, to be taught, and it must be inculcated in their heads and their minds, the respect of women. The girls that they are growing up and learning with in school must be respected. Respect the women, the young girls that you're learning with, your mother, your sister, your aunt, your grandmother. I mean, some of the horrible things that we hear about of young men raping their grandmothers. These are horrendous things. We need to be sending those messages to them so that as young men grow up, they should know that they need to respect women. And of course, one of the key problems is that we have families that are headed by single women. The fathers are not there. The fathers are not in the lives of our children. And that too requires attention. It requires a clear message to be sent to the men of South Africa who have children that, one, they don't live with, children that they don't look after. And some of the men don't even support their children. We need to put out a clear message that if you have a child, look after your child, support your child, and be a father to your children. So these are messages that need to be spread around. And if we need to be evangelical and preach these types of messages, so be it, because we need to use every means to reach out to the hearts of the men of our country. It is a real scourge that in this day and age, particularly as we are going through coronavirus, which is a massive pandemic that we are going through, we now have to go through another pandemic where the women of our country have become completely defenseless and where they are being slaughtered like animals. This needs to be put out into the public, and we need to get men to stop this cruelty, to stop this horrendous disposition that they have towards women. They are acting in an uncultural way. This is not part of our culture. This is not part of our tradition. Our forebears never behaved in this way. And we should therefore be pushing that message across, that they are acting untraditionally, unculturally, and completely devoid of the morality that underpinned the lives of our forebears. But I believe that that's what we need to do. But of course, at the same time, we need to support the women of our country. Women of our country need a great deal of support. The Thuthuzela centers that we've put up needs to be increased. I'm not happy with the number of Thuthuzela centers. There needs to be more. As we are working on the men, we need to do that. But also we need to be focusing on economically empowering the women of our country. Some of the women stay forever in violent relationships because they have no other way economically to fend for themselves and their children. So the empowerment of women is top priority. That is why we've highlighted it as top priority in government, and we're going to be pushing that. We need to ensure that women of our country become properly skilled, properly empowered so that they can stand up on their own 2 feet and be able to walk away from relationships that are abusive, that are violent, that could even lead to their deaths. So that is another thrust. But as we do that, the empowerment of young girls at institutions of learning, at university, at colleges, and even at high school is another important area that we need to focus on. And we need to be spreading the message also to our educators, because that's where they also need to make an intervention. And the systems that we've got in our institutions of learning must also be supportive. We must be able to have systems that will detect possible abuse of young women at institutions of learning. And the same thing must happen in the workplace. Workplace, that's where women are also abused quite seriously. Sexual harassment is quite often the order of the day in many companies. And that is why we are saying companies must have sexual harassment policies. They must also be companies that will be able to lead the process of conscientizing their employees, especially men. And we've known of women who work in certain situations where they are physically harassed at work. Sometimes it happens in the mines, underground. Sometimes it happens in the office. Sometimes it happens when people are traveling on work projects and all that. And so therefore, we must heighten the message. And in a way, it needs to be made clear that you harass a woman sexually, you beat up a woman, you rape a woman, the consequences are going to be very harsh. It's for that reason that I've supported very, very strongly that when a man has been arrested for rape, for killing, and even for assault, they must not be given bail. And when men know that, I do believe that they will stop in their tracks. They will stop in their tracks and not be able to do that. But we must also deal with another aspect. Our society is largely traumatized by all the terrible things that we've inherited from apartheid. Apart from poverty and inequality and unemployment, there's just also just the violent environment that our people live in. And that's why we've been saying that we want socio-analysis people to be in place, your social workers, your supportive other socio-analytical skilled people or experts to be in place. I want all the social workers who are unemployed right now to be brought into employment, because there are many wounds, there are many scars in our society, and some of them manifest themselves in all these terrible things that are happening to our women. And women also need to be supported. When a woman is violated, when a woman is abused, they need a professional to be on hand at short notice to be able to come and assist them. But we also need to get those people to spend time with men in groups, and so that we can pass on the message. So our task is huge. But I'd like to thank the ANC Women's League, the Young Women's League of the ANC desk, who have stood up and raised this issue very sharply. I'm very, very, very appreciative of the work that our ministry is doing of women, for youth, as well as disabled people is doing. But the ANC Women's League has been leading the charge, raising the level of consciousness. And today we've got all the structures that we are putting in place, the strategic plan that the women of our country have crafted is in place to support women of our country. We've been even bold enough, and I think slightly bolder than many other countries who are also having exactly the same problem. We've made available money, 1.6 billion, and I want to see us adding on to that. We've also made sure that we get our police stations to be on the ready all the time, and the training of our police officers, as well as our judicial officers on matters that have to do with gender-based violence is gaining traction. The courts, the special courts that we have set up are also a wonderful, wonderful addition to the work that we are doing. So the war and the battle has been joined. We need the men of South Africa to join the battle to fight gender-based violence. And the men of South Africa, we must be in the forefront. We must be leading the charge. We must be the ones who take up the struggle. We cannot let the women of our country fight this struggle on their own. It must be our struggle. It must be my struggle. It must be my son's struggle. It must be every father's struggle and their sons. We must be able to inculcate this into our boys, into our young men in our country, from a young boy as young as a few years old, right through their lives. They must know that women, the women of South Africa, are not to be abused, they are not to be touched, they are to be respected, and they are to be honored. So today, I'd like to make a call to the men of South Africa that let us honor, let us love, let us respect our women. The women of South Africa are our mothers. They are the ones who bring life into this world. There's not a single man in South Africa who has not gone through the hands of a woman. We were all born by women, and our task must be to respect them. We should literally go on our knees and respect the women of our country. I was touched and moved when I saw the men yesterday on their knees in the march. That to me was most touching, because that is where we've got to be as the men of our country. That is where we belong, respecting the women of our country. So today is a great day, and I am appreciative of this effort that has been embarked upon. So thank you very much, DSG. Thank you very much, President of the ANC Women's League, and everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you very much, Comrade President, for that good summary on the issues and recommendations from our panel, as well as what needs to be done going forward. I think all the inputs are assisting us sitting here tonight that as a country, we need to take a lot in terms of men leading and assisting in supporting within the fight against gender-based violence in our societies, President. Thank you very much. And also, President, gathered here this evening in this visual platform, we have close to 500 of ANC, COSATU, and SACP provincial and regional leadership from across the country. They have listened to the inputs from the panel as well as the inputs from the President. The comrades who are part of this discussion this evening have their own experiences, Comrade President, as men and women, as leaders and activists, but also as brothers, as fathers, as well as mothers and sisters. So all the inputs that have been made are charting a way forward in terms of our recommendations coming out of this platform. Enough is enough, and action must be taken, and all men must be on board. Thank you very much, Mr. Comrade President. We will now open the floor for the conversation and call the following speakers to introduce. We will also request the comrades who are going to speak now to introduce themselves as for where they are from and their names. And they need to be also brief in terms of their comment. We will only allow them 2 minutes each. And the comrades are as follows.
We have Comrade Tembeni Nakisa from the Free State, Comrade Sylvia Lucas, and Comrade Unati Shokswana. Comrade Tembeni.
Thanks, Comrade Phoebe. And I also want to thank the speakers and the President. Mine was just one issue, leadership, that if we want to permanently outroot this issue, I think we must go back to Ubuntu, building family structure and ensuring that we bring back the family union, where we appreciate one another, where we appreciate our humanity and respect as one of the pillars of the family, and love cementing everything. I think it will build to a long term, because most of the people who are victimized, it is seldom that it is strangers. Mostly it is people they know, people they trust, people they love. And somehow these people turn out to be the ones victimizing them and turning very violent against them. So in most of those environments, there's no policing, there's no one except you and the person you are close with. So my request would be focus also as one of the solutions into building the family structure, strengthening the family structure through programs that brings Ubuntu central to the family union. And lastly, one other issue is the easy accessibility of drugs is a battle that all of us must fight, because it exacerbates the problem further. Thank you very much, leadership.
Thank you very much, Comrade Unati. I just need to remind them that each speaker has to take 2 minutes only. Those other speakers can be able to comment on our chat group. We also have a Facebook where they can make their comments, as maybe most of us may not be able to go through. But the next speaker, which is on our list now, is Comrade Mojali Fanale. Comrade Mojali, you have 2 minutes. You can introduce yourself, where you come from.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Chair. Mojali Fanale is my name. I work for the African National Congress. And evening to the leadership of the Alliance. Chair, well, I know that I might not have the authority to do so, but I just feel that I must say, as part of owning up on behalf of this gender, we apologize to all women out there for the things that these other men are doing. Just to own up that as a man, I feel very much ashamed of things that are done against women. Very quickly, Chair, let me say, Comrade DSG and Comrade Nomvula are part of the authors of a document that is known as the National Crime Prevention Strategy. Now, when the National Crime Prevention Strategy was visualized, one of the pillars, Comrade Chair, was what was called environmental design. Now, environmental design pillar was simply an attempt to deter the criminal ability to be influenced to offend. Look at all of those environmental things that influence the offender before the offender can commit a crime. It's in the National Crime Prevention Strategy, quite detailed. I want to appeal that we need to visit that document because it has a lot of what needs to happen. And part of it was influenced by issues of rape that was prevalent at the time when the document was developed. The second part, which is the last part, Comrade Chair, to conclude my 2 minutes, is another pillar of the National Crime Prevention Strategy that deals with the criminal justice system. One, it talks about issues of arrest, prosecution, and quite important is conviction. Now, there can be no success against this endemic if we don't improve the rate of arrest. But even if people that are committing crime are arrested, there must be prosecution. And once prosecution is started, there needs to be conviction. So if the conviction rate is very low and the killing of women is very high, we can't applaud the criminal justice system. And this criminal justice system as designed in the NCPS is that offenders, when they go to jail, there must be rehabilitation. Why do we still have people that have gone to jail, they come out, they continue to perpetrate violence against women? The issue of integration back to society. Why release a person on parole and this person, when going back to society, still commit the same crime? So the National Crime Prevention Strategy is
stop you. We've got a whole list of comrades who wants to speak. Comrade Unathi Tsoswani.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Because I've been
Is that
identified. No, Comrade Sylvia Lucas, I've been identified and you are ignoring me.
It's me now that must speak.
No.
Okay, let's start with Comrade Unathi Tsoswani first, and then we'll go through the list, Comrade Sylvia.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to the leadership of the Alliance. Firstly, let us welcome this discussion. It's very fruitful. We as the Alliance in the Western Cape, I'm from the Western Cape, in the IPC, we had a discussion on many things that must be raised, but I'll just highlight the important things because some of the comrades have touched based on many things that need to happen. But I think what's mostly important from us on our side is that government and us as the ruling party needs to start going back to the roots of people and start to go to having our Know Your campaigns. It's very important, the campaign that was run by the Women's League, Molo Mhlobo Wam. We need to make sure that our communications in terms of our SABC goes back and plays those TV programs that they used to play for the kids, because those are educational programs. Basic education at some point in life orientation from grade 1 to grade 12 should introduce this topic, gender-based violence, as a part of discussions in schools, because it's very important. And I think another thing that we need to know, as Comrade Chauke said, this discussion started from top, but we need to broaden it in sense that we need to engage our religious structures, and we also need to make sure that we speak to our religious and our traditional leaders, because I think in that many society find vision and they listen to the religious and the traditional leaders. So I think more sentencing for these perpetrators, they mustn't get bail. And lastly, I think that we need to have proper advanced programs to rehabilitate those who come out in society and profile them, because they've got they move from one community to another community. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Comrade. Comrade Sylvia, you can come in.
Thank you, Comrade Joyce. Thank you very much, comrades. Let me start by commending the initiative that has been taken tonight for us to be able to be discussing this. Just yesterday, I joined the National Men's Forum in the National Men's Dialogue, and what I've observed is that the language is becoming more common. So there is generally a common understanding of what we are facing and what we ought to do. But I just want to comment on some of the issues that was raised by those that made presentations. I think the issue of the curriculum is an issue that is becoming very important, because we agree that we need to introduce into our curriculum a kind of gender neutral notion that will actually build boys, and that will actually, we will actually have men that understand the importance of the equality of the sexes. And the other issue that I also want to agree with is the fact that I think last year in Parliament we spoke about the issue that we agree that there is this low intensity war that is being waged against our women, children, and particularly vulnerable groups. And in this war, men have been perpetrators, but in the campaigns to fight against it, it has always been the women. Men have been seen as spectators in these campaigns, but we can see that there is a rising consciousness amongst our men that they must also get involved. And I think tonight's event is actually emphasizing that specifically. We need to build positive role models so that we can see a generation that will be able to rise above this intergenerational culture of violence against women and children. We need to break it, but also we need our fathers and our men to nurture the emotional development of our boys so that we will see a better generation after this generation that is being seen as the most violent against those that are vulnerable and cannot defend themselves. That will be my input for the 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Sylvia. We'll move on to Comrade Kopano. Is the Provincial Secretary of COSATU in Northwest. Comrade Kopano. Two minutes for you, Comrade Kopano. If Comrade Kopano is not there, are you there, Comrade Kopano? We will then move to Comrade Nolita. Comrade Nolita.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Greetings to the leadership, especially the President of the ANC and the President of the Women's League. I am Nolita Ntobongwana, the Provincial Secretary of the ANC Women's League in Eastern Cape. Chair, just a few things. I think it is high time that we need the matches that say now, save our women and children. I think we need those matches, those shut down. I think it is high time that we need matches like that. And two, which would say women's lives matter. But Chair, also, our male comrades, I think they must stop saying that when we raise the issue of gender-based violence in the meetings, they say that we are being feminist. I think that has to stop at this age when women are being killed day in, day out. President, the killer of Simbongile Mangotya in Kofimvaba, Eastern Cape, is out on bail because it is said he is a first-time offender. We have these rules, we have these laws that says someone won't be given bail, but they are given bail and they go out and kill more women each day. I really appreciate what Comrade Soli has said, that we need mass mobilization. I think it's high time that our men stand up. Our Provincial Secretary in Eastern Cape has been the beacon of hope, has really stood out in all these matches representing men, but he is a lone voice when all the men out there are killing men, are killing women and our children. But lastly, I'm not sure who said this in one of the comrades that said it, that we must go to the informal settlement, we must go to the villages, we must go to the township, forgetting that some of the killers are staying in those suburbs. Some of the killers are in Sandton. Some of the killers are in Centurion. That is why I'm saying I'm agreeing with Comrade Soli when he's saying that we must have a mass mobilization. We need marches now that say, save our women and children. Women's lives matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will check again if Comrade Kopano managed to be on the system. Can Comrade Kopano speak? And if Comrade Kopano is not there, I'll give Comrade Jess. Comrade Jesse.
Comrade, sorry, Chair, I thought that will give Free State chance to speak before Comrade Jesse come in, with due respect.
Okay. No, I didn't have Free State on the list. It's okay. You can proceed, Free State.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Comrade Olim Lamleli, the provincial chair of the ANC Women's League. I just want to say, comrades, we do hear what the leadership that are saying, but we as Free State, we are saying we had a number of instances where our own ANC-led government have tried by all means to address this gender-based violence. Let me also refer to the meeting in Africa at the AU level, which was then led by the Office of President Thabo Mbeki, where we met as the gender specialists as well as the gender ministers. We were still discussing about gender-based violence. Secondly, Chairperson, we held here in Free State a situation where Comrade Andries Nel, when he was still the Minister of Justice, when he came here in Bethlehem, because of the escalating number of gender-based violence. We also have situations where we discussed about gender-based violence. I do understand where our male comrades are trying to support. But what we are saying is that, Mr. President, with all the endeavors, including the national gender machinery that was sitting at union buildings trying to address this, here we are today. Here we are still having some proposal from our beloved male comrades. What are we doing? Are we still coming with our proposal? Because, President, with due respect, we feel that with all the endeavors by our ANC-led government, by our women, by our AU structures, in terms of the Economic Commission of Africa, we have done all what we have done. Comrades, are we still saying we need to come with another new proposals? What are the specific things? Because remember, when we as the ANC Women's League, we went to the NGC, we are very specific. We do understand that the reasons why ANC is not in favor of death sentence. We do understand, we understand. But we are saying that even if, as it is now, a pregnant woman, 8 months pregnant, stabbed and hanged, are we still saying, let us not come up with other impractical proposals? Comrade President, we are appealing. We now want action. Because when we say that there must be harsh sentence, the harsh sentence, they'll be kept there for life, enjoying TV programs, enjoying studies, they are being trained while we are using life of women.
Thank you, comrade, very much. Thank you very
much. Thank you very much, comrade.
Thank you very much. For 2 minutes only, we're really running out of time. And to choose one issue out of the many issues that were discussed to respond on. So I'll start with Comrade Solly, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, DSG, and thanks to Comrade President for joining the program. We will certainly appreciate this question of the national endeavor, which I think is a brilliant idea in our broad mobilization. We can cascade it across all levels and run it in a broad front manner that is not just purely alliance, but broad in society so that every other member of our society gets involved in the fight against women abuse and gender-based violence specifically. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Solly. Comrade Tabile? Are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here, Comrade. I think the issue that I want to touch on is how we shape our curriculum. If you look carefully at the system of China, China has defined the type of curriculum that they want and the type of youth that they want to produce. So when you look at South Africa, young boys and girls are still reading about what a girl is expected to do in society, what a boy is expected to do in society. I think if we shape that the curriculum is presented and the curriculum that the students receive, it's very important, and also helping to shape the society that we want, and also improving services that are provided there for survivors. For example, who really goes back to the community and makes sure that the people that get protection orders actually are protected, because opening a protection order is actually a cry for help, but who then does a follow-up to actually ensure that those people are safe? No one does that. Who provides mental and psychological support for people that undergo cases of gender-based violence? You find that some people cannot afford expensive lawyers. Then what happens to those that are provided by the state? How do we ensure that they're able to provide counseling for the victims, and ensure that at the same time they're able to help them with their cases? Funding campaigns such as raising awareness, funding programs that are available in our communities that support gender-based violence awareness, and also conscientize society and young people into understanding that we are living in a society where the life of a woman is in serious danger in South Africa. And how do we ensure that we create a space for them, for young girls to be able to grow, for young girls to be able to and be involved in the society. Also,
thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Comrade Tulani. Comrade, can I ask you not to do that? I'm not sure who that was that did that, but can we respect one another? Comrade Tulani?
Thank you very much.
Tulani, your mic is off.
Oh, technology, and I wonder because I'm still young. Thank you, DSG. We want to also welcome the president in our meeting. I will support very strongly the issue of the Indaba. And majority we must target men. If possible, Department of Justice also to involve some inmates who did, or if I may say, who are perpetrators of gender-based violence. We think maybe they will also see, they will also hear what bad they did to our country. Also, I will emphasize what has been said also, to make sure that we start this at the school level, especially from primary, and also in the universities. Maybe if it's possible, this gender-based violence be part of the academic, or become part of the subjects. Maybe we think it can assist. Thank you, DSG.
Thank you very much. Comrade Lulama.
Thank you very much, Comrade DSG. I hope that I can be seen now.
Yes, you can. Finally.
Thank you very much, Leslie, and the leadership entirely. My viewpoint is clear, Chairperson, that today we have planted the seed, and we have created the necessary platform to deal with the gender-based violence. Now, our responsibility is to walk the talk and have men in the forefront of the fight against the violence. Action, action, action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Comrade Bafana.
Thank you very much, Comrade Jesse. We will be aware that with the South African Council of Churches, the South African Catholic Bishops Conference on Sunday, we launched a massive program that is targeting faith leaders, male faith leaders, to begin to engage on reviewing the narrative about what it means to be a man in South Africa. we would like to emphasize that we need more efforts in this direction, where we do work with young men and boys, so that as men we reflect on what it means to be a man in a democratic society and how we can make a positive contribution in what we call positive fatherhood. And this effort will be rolling out and including other sectors of society that have shown interest in this intervention. We think through these kinds of effort, in allyship with the women's sector, we will be able to make the change that we require in our society.
Thank you. Comrades, unfortunately, the President has had to leave to prepare for tomorrow's program, but he's made a proposal that we need to do some more work and we need to continue with the conversation. That brings us to the end of this conversation, which has really been long overdue. Many thanks to Comrade President and to our esteemed panelists, leadership of the Alliance, provincial and regional leadership, and my fellow moderators and all who joined us today for this important conversation. It must continue, but it must continue in a very real way in all the branches of the ANC, at the shop steward councils of COSATU, at all the meetings of the party districts throughout the country, in universities and communities, in our churches, mosques, and other places of prayer, in our homes, as well as when we speak to our friends and family and loved ones. The only way we can actually conscientize our entire country is to continue to talk about how women must be protected and how children must be protected and how stop the violence against women and children, because if we don't, we are actually ending the future in itself. It's a defeatist thing that we are doing by killing women, by murdering children, throwing them into washing baskets. It's something that we as a society have to stop. And the only way we can stop it is, yes, talking to each other here, but it's actually time to do footwork as well. We need to get to the ground. We need to talk to people in their homes, in the streets, block committees, street committees. It's time to use this as an activation point to actually build a solid nation. So comrades, we need to make the circle bigger, and we want to thank you all for participating tonight. Thank you very much, comrades. Amandla, Malibongwe.